voice. Ah, okay.
Hi, it's good to be back.
It is so great to have you here. And we talked a lot about your mom last time,
Mhm.
and she has the most incredible advice. So there was a few questions that people had about your mom. One of them is, would you ever think about writing a book with all of your brilliant sayings and the things from your mom?
Oh, I would love to do that. And let me just tell you, I always tell my mom, and I would tell my grandmother when she was alive, I would tell them how great they are. Like my mom doesn't think she's great. She's like, oh no. And I will always write her letters sometime and give her a card. And I always put in there, if I had to choose my mom from all the moms in the world, I would still choose you. And she's just like, yeah, you're just saying that because my mom. So she really, I don't think she's taken stock of the fact that she's such a great parent. And as you know, parents tend to focus on what they think they didn't get right. I would love to sit down with her and write a book with her. And I was one of the children in our family because of the way the age range was. I was always, my grandmother was babysitting me, or I was with my mom. So that was the people I would sit around and listen to. And my mother, my grandmother would always say, older people, listen to them because they have some great knowledge to impart. Even my great grandmother, my mom will say things that she said. And my great grandmother wasn't formally educated, but my mom said, when I think back on it, she was giving some great sage advice. My grandmother only graduated as far as sixth grade, but she would give great sage advice. And I just love my mom. What can I say? I think she's fantastic. I wouldn't trade her for the world.
I think she's fantastic. I love your mom too, and I've never even met her. But, just from the things you say, and I think that says a lot about how she raised you too, is you
Oh,
always have good things to say. So, all right, now on the flip side, if you could go back and change one thing about your life, what would that be? Would you
and
change?
I've thought about that. And I always think about it in terms of It's a Wonderful Life, that movie.
Mhm.
I wouldn't change anything about my life, and here's why. It's because I don't know if there are changes that I would make would negatively impact someone else. So I wouldn't. Because let's say I would say my adventure to law school. So I ended up putting letters in the mail. And I thought, I don't know if I told this story last time.
No.
Okay, this is how I decided on what law school I was going to. I got employment. I had just finished grad school. And I said, every check I have, I'm going to use it to send it off to a law school. And at that time, I didn't know that you had to pay to put in an application. So it was like $150. And I was like, well, this is going to get expensive. So I sent it off, I think, to three schools. I sent it to St. Mary's. And the reason why I sent it to here in San Antonio is because they had um, a nice program, and they had where you can actually practice law. And then I sent it to, that's my mom now. I'm sorry, just one second. Anyway, what I did was I sent one to St. Mary's, I sent one to Pepperdine, and I sent one to Hawaii. And my mom said, hey, if you get accepted to Hawaii, you are not going to be able to come home on a regular basis because it's going to be too expensive. But me, I'm just like, I'm going to be in Hawaii. So what ends up happening is I was like, oh my gosh, this is a big decision, where I'm going to go. And my mom said, we're just going to pray over it. And whichever application comes back with an acceptance first, that's where you're going to go. So lo and behold, check the mailbox. And the one that came back first is St. Mary's. So we get on a car, we come to St. Mary's. My mom's like, I love the people. It's a big, ginormous city compared to Shreveport. But she's like, it seems like family here. So this is where you're going to go. I'm like, yeah, this is where we're going to go. I met the dean and everything. So when I come back home, there is a letter in the mailbox, and it's an acceptance letter from Pepperdine, and it's a full scholarship. And I'm like, oh, full scholarship, Pepperdine, because their brochure was so beautiful. It was a brochure of the rocks being hit by water, and it just seems like it was so serene. And my mom's like, yeah, you can't go there because we said we're going to pray over it. So I didn't go to Pepperdine, and in the words of Seinfeld, yada, 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 I ended up with the equivalent of a mortgage in school loans. And I had to sit out a year from St. Mary's because they didn't have any dorm space available. So I sat out an entire year. Now, the expedited route, accept that scholarship to Pepperdine. But who knows what would happen if I would have accepted that. And I would have missed some great people. I would not have been staying in the dorm. And when I was staying in the dorm, I got to meet people who were studying for engineering degrees. So I never like to say, if I could go back, I could change this. It even relates to, I've had a lot of females in my family who passed from breast cancer. And I think to myself, you know what, if I could go back, I'd say, hey, you know what? Everybody in this family, we really need to get that breast exam. We really need to do this. But then, you know, when certain people in my family pass, then their children have become adults. They've been married and they've had children. So if that person were to still be around, would they still have gotten married? Would they still have children? Would we not have the children we have? It's just too many variables for me to say I would go back and change anything.
And I think that's beautiful too. And yeah, because
You never know.
you
What's your
never know,
one decision? It'll
right?
mess the time continuum up.
And why? And something that sometimes the things that we think look like the best,
Mhm.
once they pass, we realize they were not, the
That
best.
is so true. And there's a program, I mean, there was a movie, I think it was called About Time, where this guy could go back in time. And he went back in time because he was trying to reintroduce himself to this girl because he kept making mistakes, right? And then one time he went back in time and he came back, and the person who, I think they had a daughter. And when they came back, it was no longer a daughter, it was now a son
Oh, wow.
because they kept messing with the timeline. So,
Right.
yeah.
Plus, you're closer to your mom. You could drive there, and I think that, that makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
So, all right. If Is there a case, yours or someone else's, that's really stuck with you that you can share? I know there's a lot of things you can't share.
Mhm. Well, I will tell you, there's a case that I had in my past as a defense attorney. And this is why I always stress to my students about being a defense attorney. Each case that you have is a lot of cases for you, but for the person that you represent, that is the most important case in their life. And in this job, it's sort of easy to get jaded. Like, oh, I've heard this story a million times. Even when I'm sitting on the bench, sometimes people ask me, people keep coming up with the same stories. How do you do it? And I always tell them, it's for me, that's the first time that person is telling it to me. So I'm going to treat it as it's new. So I had a client, and this client was telling me they're not guilty of something, right? But all the evidence was pointing towards guilt. And so I had to take a real step back because sometimes you're just like, this is what the evidence is. This is what it is. And that case brought me back where I'm like, you know what, Stephanie? Step away for a little bit. Come back, review everything. And I see that client all the time. And she's just like, oh, Stephanie, thank you so much for believing in me. Thank you for just leaving no stone unturned. And I would always leave no stones unturned, but it's just that that case sticks out to me the most because the evidence against that person was piled so high. And it was a matter of wading through everything and leaving no stone unturned. And she's such a great person, and I see her all the time.
That's great. And she was innocent.
Yes.
See, and that's so wonderful.
Oh, see, and that's the rough thing about this job. People will always ask you, oh, when I was a defense attorney, how can you represent someone who did such a horrible thing? And I always have to remind the public, one, you don't know if they did it or not because you were not there. And if you were there, you should not be representing them. And two, think about your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, whoever it is. Would you not want somebody to represent them? A lot of people are okay with, how dare you represent this person or that person, until it's somebody they love. And that's why I stress that everybody's a human being and should be treated as such. But it's hard. And the hardest thing is when you have a client and you 100% believe and say, this person is 100% innocent. That is so terrifying because your heart is just beating. And I've had 4 cases where my heart is just like, of course, my heart would beat all the time because I'm just like, oh, but still, those cases were devastating and devastating. They were found not guilty, but those cases were devastating because there was so much at stake. And, the family is putting all their hopes, their dreams on you, like, please do that, and I'm like, hey, I'm not on the jury, but I'm doing the best I can. But they're hard.
So if somebody needs to come to court, maybe they're a defendant or something, do you have advice for people who don't know what they should be doing when they show up?
Yes. So here's my advice. Coming to court, oh my gosh, it is nerve wracking. I know it's nerve wracking for a defendant, but you're trying to put your best foot forward. Nobody's asking people who are accused or people who come to court. I'm not asking you, unless you're an attorney, I'm not asking you to come with a suit, a tie, and all of that, because some people just don't have a suit or a tie laying around. And I would always tell my clients, look, you can come in with a nice pair of jeans and a nice shirt. Just get you a white shirt. That's it. You don't even really need a tie, just a white shirt. And if you want to throw on a sports jacket just for extra, do that. But don't wear shirts that have writings on them. Don't come to court when you're charged with DWI with a shirt that says boozy night, which we've seen. Don't come to court with the marijuana leaf. Now is not the time for you to make a political statement or a statement on society. You just want to fade in. I would always tell my clients, one of the worst things for you is if a judge sort of remembers you, because sometimes they're remembering you because there's some crazy things that have happened in regards to you, or you've done some crazy things. You just want to be nondescript. You just want to come in, be pleasant, no gum chewing, make sure your phones are off, no flip-flops, no shorts, ladies, no low-cut blouses. I actually had a client once who came from a nightclub, straight from the nightclub to court, stayed up all night at the nightclub and came in. And I was like, you're not dressed appropriately. You got to run down to the Goodwill. You got to put on a jacket because the judge is going to be very angry. And so that's the number one rule. And people, don't bring your children to court. When your attorney is asking you questions, or even when the judge is asking you questions, only answer what's being asked. Because a lot of times in my court, I'll ask a specific question and then somebody will go off on tangents and I go off on the tangent with them because I've just discovered something that I didn't know. For example, today we had someone who has access to a vehicle and they're not supposed to. And so people are like, oh, we didn't know that, So listen to those questions. Oh, and number one, always be on time.
So I have a few questions from other people.
Sure.
And so I'll tell you, so they're all people who are on YouTube who
Mhm.
watch you and everything. So the first one, it's a his interesting name. He is Jonathan from Drunk Beaver Productions.
Hello, Jen. It's Jonathan from Drunk Beaver Productions. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this interview, and thank you to Judge Boyd for the time today. It's an honor to get to interact with you. My question is, Judge Boyd, what was the driving factor in your decision to pursue a career in the justice system?
Believe it or not. So when my grandmother would babysit me, I was probably the only 4-year-old who watched Perry Mason. I watched Perry Mason. I love what Perry Mason did. I'm like, this would be a great thing. And I've always wanted to be an attorney. And I never deviated from that. Even when I was going to graduate school, it was like, I probably need a business degree because I'm going to be an attorney and I'm going to be on my own. And I need to know how all of the financial things work. So I always wanted to be an attorney. And my mom always said to me, Stephanie, if you're going to find an occupation that you can make a living at and that you're passionate about and you enjoy it, it really won't be work. And in the lean years, you'll still be able to struggle through it and it'll be fine because you enjoy it. And so that's why I chose criminal law. Oh, and just as a side note, the other thing that people should know about courtrooms, they're open to the public. So always, when you want to know who your judges are, pack a lunch, go downtown, wherever it may be, And you can just sit in the courtroom and watch trials. It doesn't have to be a famous trial. It doesn't have to be the Johnny Depp trial or whatever. And you can just see what happens day to day in your courts. The only things I suggest you not do is CPS court, which is the child protective courts, and the juvenile courts. But all of the adult courts, just walk in there, see what's going on. Civil side, somebody's having a car suit case. Go over there, see how it is.
What's going on? This is Colin. Judge Boyd, good to see you. As a judge, do you ever get frustrated with attorneys and want to come off the bench and help the client yourself? Let me know.
No, you know what I end up doing? What I'll end up doing is I go off the record, and then I'll bring the state's attorney and the defense attorney in the back, and we'll have a discussion if I think there's an issue. Because I never want to embarrass anyone, and then I don't know everything, and I don't pretend like I know everything and know every little single piece of law. And I know that attorneys don't, and they're struggling. They have all of these cases. And sometimes, yeah, they're attorneys, but everybody's a human being, and they have a lot of things that are going on in their life that sometimes is more than just this. Sometimes I have attorneys whose parents have just passed, so they're a little, off kilter. So I'll bring them in the back and say, hey, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And like for today, people think, may I've been short with my patience today? I don't know. But I was trying to get people directly to the point because I knew we have a jury trial and I don't want to keep a jury waiting. But no, I never want to jump down and do that to an attorney. And if I think there's an attorney who maybe is having some issues with representation, I'll talk to them in the back with the prosecutor. And anytime there's an attorney who's been in that situation, they'll let me know and say, Judge, I really think I need to be off of this case, and this is why. And we'll do it that way because I don't want to ruin their ability to have a livelihood or ruin their reputation because there is one incident, when they represented thousands, and this is just this one where all the things align to put them in the situation that they're in.
Well, that is a very kind response.
Oh.
Thank you, Judge Boyd, for the opportunity to ask you questions. Thank you for your years in the family courts. Do you feel that the infrastructure is adequate to provide the services for the people in your area?
No. All right, let me just tell you what I think. In the dream world, if there was money available and we just had this extra money to spend, let me just tell you, Child Protective Services workers, they're overworked, underpaid, they're not enough. That's why in my court, I'm focusing too, as far as improving a person's life and helping them build. I'm always looking for what is happening with the children. And really, when you think about it, if I have somebody in my courtroom who's testing positive for meth, Child Protective Services should be involved in their life if they have children. Because someone who is using meth is not a good parent. You can't be a good parent, no matter how you say, oh, well, I don't use meth around my children, or we're not doing, it's affecting and impacting your children. So on those cases that I have, Child Protective Services should be involved. But there's a limited number of workers. And that's why I always have probation officers doing field visits so they can go out there, make sure that the children are okay. In a perfect world, I would love, and I think, and if y'all want to write your legislature, please write your legislature. I think that in every criminal court, there should be an assigned CPS caseworker so that they can know what's happening with children. And then I've had cases in my court sometime where CPS worker is involved and they don't know that the defendant is testing positive for drugs. That's why I always have CPS workers zoom in, like, did you know this person is in court testing positive for drugs? They're like, oh, we didn't know that. Okay, everybody needs to get on the same page. And sometimes it's not a matter of people are about to get revoked in my court. It's, I'm trying to get you back on track. We're trying to make you be successful. The best parent for their children really is supposed to be their parents. Government is not great with raising children.
Judge Boyd, we would like to know you could have any skill or talent that you currently do not possess, what would that be and why?
I cannot sing to save my life. My mom has the most beautiful voice. I can't sing to save my life, but I still sing. And I would love to be able to carry a tune because I just think singing is so beautiful. It's nice to hum through the day. And my mom says sometimes Stephanie, do you know you hum? She's like, sometimes when you're on the bench, I can hear you humming. And I said, no, I didn't know that. But singing, I would love to be able to sing. And I can't. I accept it, but I still sing as though I can. And my mom said, oh no, your voice is beautiful.
Now we have
So,
Bill from All right, and then the last one from someone else is Meg from Meg's Crime Watch.
I'm curious if Judge Boyd ever watches any of the YouTube streams of courts in other jurisdictions and what her thoughts are on it if she does.
I really don't. Let me see, have I ever watched anything? I haven't watched anything. I'll see, like if I'm watching a documentary, then maybe that'll come up. Me watching sort of documentaries about court cases, that ended after I graduated from law school because we didn't have time. But we would always watch documentaries about court cases because as an attorney, you're trying to learn your craft, what not to do, what's this, what that. But normally I don't, because once I take a break and, I'm off the clock, I really want to be off the clock.
All right. So what do you like to do? I mean, I know you like to travel to Paris, but what other things do you enjoy doing outside of work?
I love reading. I love gardening. And actually, when I get back in my home, I'm going to start my little vegetable garden. And now I'm just like enamored with my niece. I try to get home as much as possible to see her. And I do have travel plans that I'm getting in place for my mom so we can go to Italy together. When I retire, hopefully, people said, what will retirement look like? What are your plans? And so I have to start formulating plans as to what is that going to look like for me. And hopefully it's going to be traveling and owning a bookstore, but we shall see.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I love
gosh, I've always wanted to own a bookstore. One of the attorneys in our court, he loves everything on Julius Caesar. And I always tease him about Julius Caesar because I watched Spartacus on, I think it was on Stars or whatever. He's like, that didn't happen. I'm like, well, that's not what it says on Spartacus. He's like, stop, you're ruining my hero. But I love historical fiction as well. Because I always think, I love to read it and then go to the location where it's supposed to have happened. And I always think to myself, okay, at this point in time, during that time period, what were people thinking? And could they see, in the words of Briscoe County Jr., the coming thing? I always wonder about that.
Oh, I know. I don't think they could imagine anything about what we live right now.
Yeah. Oh, even with my grandmother, my mom is like, it is amazing. You can take a photo on your phone and then send it to the other person and they can see it. I grew up where you had the camera and you had to put the flash on the top. And then when you got the disposable camera and then you just take it into Kodak and then you get your photos back.
Yeah. And you had to wait.
Yes.
And you could take one picture of each thing. That's all you got.
Oh, that's it. And then you're like, and then you can open it because if the light hit it, it will mess up the film.
Yes.
Oh, the young people don't even know what we mean when we say there's film in the camera.
Oh my goodness, no. And then half the pictures you'd be looking off and blinking and then you still put them in the album.
Yeah, and then you thought you were high tech if you had the Polaroid.
Oh, that was a big deal.
Like, look at it, that's us. Yeah.
That was so funny. All right. So the last official question I have is, what is the one thing that you would do to make our country better?
Bring back kindness, bring back consideration. Everyone, like they told us in school, put on your listening ears. I think people are so apt to respond to people before they even finish a question. They're like, oh, I know where they're going. Let me go ahead and jump right in. But listening is great. And my mom would always stress that to us because she said, you already know what you know. And if you don't listen, you're not going to learn or know what other people know. So if people would listen, if people would be kind, if people would be considerate, because I think people have their opposing viewpoints. Some people are way over here with their viewpoint. Some people are way over there. And there's never going to be a meeting in the middle. There's never going to be an agreement. But we've gotten to the point where just saying, we'll have to agree to disagree. And saying in the county, some people can't even do that anymore. And I've had political conversations with people and things that have been happening in the world with people. And there have been some times where I would have to tell them, well, if we can't even agree to this one piece, then maybe it's a non-starter, right? And we should just agree to disagree and go on with other conversations. I still, though, abide by what my mom said, which is don't talk religion or politics and everything will be fine. And if somebody wants to impart some knowledge, here you are. And even people who have different viewpoints with me on social issues or politically, if they have something they want to tell me, I'll tell them, hey, yeah, sure, I'll listen. What does it hurt to listen, right? Just be nice. And just because it doesn't hurt you to take that piece of paper. And guess what? That'll be a piece of paper, if you don't want to keep it, that you can put it in the recycle bin. And that'll be one less piece of paper that was not recycled.
So, all right. Well, thank you. I know you've got a trial, so we will definitely let you go. And do you have any parting words for the listeners?
All right, everyone, be kind, be patient, and don't spend more than 5 minutes on a problem that is only worth 5 minutes of your time.
Mic drop. There we go. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. It's always great seeing you.
Great seeing you too.
And my mom loves you, by the way. She's
like, I love her too.